ESV, it just says just straight up like meaning of Hebrew unknown, which is just lovely when you're when you're reading that and you're just kind of like, hang on, what? But like I was saying, it's not the only place where we have the word. Um, but I think overall, what it points to, and this is kind of, I think, getting back to the whole stuff about the oracle, like this chapter is like really stinking old. I mean, I say that not to mean that like it's as if like, well, like some parts of the Bible were written just like, like super late. Like I think some scholars will contend, but like what I'm trying to say is it's like some of these different elements I think kind of have like a very old oral tradition behind them, especially when they were poetic or yeah, I mean, yeah, basically when they were poetic or maybe like when there were songs. And so because of that, they tended to keep a lot of archaic language, which meant that later on, the people who were like writing it down then, right, didn't even necessarily know what they were writing. It was just kind of like, well, that's what they say, or that's just how it goes. Like I was thinking about that like this morning, like with the phrase "once upon a time," right? Like nobody talks like that. You don't ever talk about like upon a time, right? Um, but like we all kind of basically know what it means. Is kind of it's just like the way that you start a story, like that kind of sounds like a fairy tale, right? And like children will know that, or like they'll know that at the end you say the end instead of the end, right? Like which is how we normally talk, right? If you talk about like the end of something, right? So yeah. So I mean, yeah, it's just kind of fascinating how there's a lot of this archaic old language in here that just points to how later on they were kind of like not super sure about what it meant, but they kept it in there anyway because they were like, well, that's how it goes though. Okay, so what can we though say about these Ariels, right? Well, I mean, it's not the only place in the Bible, like I was saying, like where you have that. Um, Let me see if I can pull it up here. Like the other spot in the Bible is in Isaiah 29, where it says, Ariel, Ariel, the city where David encamped. Add year to year, let the feasts run their round. Yeah, I will distress Ariel, and there shall be moaning and lamentation, and she shall be like, rather, and she shall be to me like an Ariel, right? So, I mean, in that, it seems like it's reference to some kind of city that that David was associated with, and so that's kind of interesting then, because if you think of it that way, we know that David did go to Moab to leave his family there, to leave his relatives there in their keeping, and we know also later that he went through right, and he wiped out 2/3 of the population. I mean, he spared a third of them. There aren't really like that many other instances where like you can talk about like these, what an Ariel might be. So, um, yeah. So just kind of on the whole, you're kind of left guessing like, is it perhaps like a term, like some kind of term for like a Moabite settlement or encampment or something like that, right? So that's kind of, I don't know. I mean that's I think where my mind goes, but it's really hard to kind of say anything about it. I mean, I will say like if you look at kind of the text stuff here, um, different translations kind of do different things with it. I mean, ancient translations, right? So like for instance, in the Greek, you get the sons of Ariel, right? So it's two of the sons of Ariel. So they just take it to be a person's name. So it's some kind of like, I don't know, like some kind of general or leader, and he killed two of his sons, right? So I kind of like make sense of it. Of course, you're still left scratching your head, like, well, who was Ariel though? Um, and yeah, I think what is like the Vulgate says lions, right? Because the name is actually very similar to the Hebrew word for a lion. Um, and so that would kind of fit too within this chapter. We see in the next verse. He also went down and struck down a lion in a pit on a day when snow had fallen. Right, which kind of fits with the stuff earlier on in First Samuel, how he had renown for killing like lions and bears and stuff, right? So there's a lot of directions you can take that. And I just yeah, I'm not really gonna say that I have that one nailed down, but um, yeah, I guess otherwise the only other thing I wanted to kind of like just briefly address was that like we had the email question just about kind of like are these guys looked upon positively as heroes or as he was kind of saying mercenary hooligans, right? Yeah, like I gotta say, on the whole, I think that we are biased um, in our 21st century Western perspective to read the characters in the Bible more negatively than we ought to, which maybe sounds weird because I feel like I don't know, ours is the time of sympathetic readings, right? Like we're doing like sympathetic readings on like the Joker, right? So it's sort of like, well, where's the sympathy? But I guess just kind of like kind of taking the last like couple centuries like all together, I think we're kind of generally inclined to be like, oh, look how bad Joab is, look how bad Saul was, right? But I think that Pastor Tice is actually right on that. Like you just wouldn't have Uriah the Hittite mentioned here if he wasn't like actually like a circumcised convert, right? And just because they're doing a lot of things that are ruthless or they're lying or I mean these sorts of things, it's like if we're realistic, like these are the sorts of things that real human beings do when they're generals and commanders and kings. Um, Even when they are religious or otherwise like what we would say generally nice people, um, this is the stuff that happens. So I don't think that just because they're mercenaries or foreigners or they do bad things means that we're supposed to look at them as they were Cretans, which is one of the terms that's used for calling them mercenaries. But all right, so just some reflections that kind of basically say like, let's not be so quick to judgment here. So, all right. Hope that helps. Looking forward to the last